The future at stake.
Kids ask us, in your honest opinion, should I be a teacher? And it's hard for me to tell them yes.
Who will be left to teach our children?
I've been around teachers who are kind of at their wits' end, right? Where they're like, maybe I should just call it.
The crisis in the classroom.
Let the people vote. That's our message today.
Where the stakes couldn't be higher.
What we've really done is lost our children, and that's what keeps the town alive.
Good evening and thanks for joining us for this special Fox Investigates report on Oklahoma's education crisis.
From the teacher shortage to freedom in the classroom, schools across Oklahoma are suffering as the state looks for solutions. Fox 25's Phil Cross begins our journey tonight by taking us into the trenches on the front lines of the education emergency.
If you don't have children or don't have kids in school, you may not realize how much the classroom has changed from when you were there. It's not just technology, though, that's changed. Schools are now required to do much more with less. It's the kind of job where the day starts long before.
Lots of guys go a lot further than I do.
Day breaks.
I've drove the bus since my first day here, 11 years now.
Landon Lewis gets to watch the sunrise as he picks up his portion of Alex Public Schools' 300-some kids. But Mr. Lewis is not just a bus driver.
You ready for today? All right.
His day job is teaching music.
I really wouldn't. I wouldn't trade the years I've been teaching for anything.
We came to Alex to see what makes a small school tick. And because more than 60% of all kids in Oklahoma go to a school that has less than 1,000 students.
Really all about 10 years of my life I've been here in Alex.
Isaac Byrne is now the elementary school principal of the elementary school he attended. He's also co-athletic director and transportation director.
During the course of the day, I got to work on scheduling athletic events, scheduling transportation, all those types of things. So the day can go pretty quickly.
With everyone doing a little bit of everything, the problems in education can be amplified, like the teacher shortage. Selling a job as a teacher isn't as easy as it used to be, and trying to convince someone to move to a town that's well off the beaten path.
No, this is probably where, not a place I would look, but I wouldn't change it.
Sharissa Byrne is a city girl who learned to love a small town, in part because her husband wanted to move back home. If you haven't figured it out, he's the elementary principal.
I think every teacher in a large school or every administrator in a large school should visit and take a role of a small school teacher administrator.
Alex actively recruits teachers. But the school is also focused on keeping the teachers it has despite low salaries.
People say sometimes we're being selfish, and that's not a selfish thing. We have families, too, that we have to support.
Valerie McCauley has been teaching in Alex for 11 years, and she has her master's degree.
After working anywhere for 11 years, if you're making $35,000, that's a hard pill to swallow.
In Alex, teachers are rewarded with retention bonuses. That helps, but it is getting harder to be a teacher.
Sometimes, kids ask us, in your honest opinion, should I be a teacher? And it's hard for me to tell them yes. There's a lot of struggles.
McCauley's classroom is unique. It's the STEM class, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math.
They start to understand why they're learning algebra and why they're learning biology. We try to do a little bit of the hands-on in here.
Not every school in Oklahoma has a STEM class. It's funded through Career Tech rather than the Public Education Fund. But in here, students get the hands-on that's missing from classrooms focused on teaching to tests.
It doesn't matter what field you're in, you're always thinking about things, you're always inventing.
We stopped teaching the things that made us great and started focusing on those bubble answer sheets, and I think it's hurting our education.
Alex Superintendent Dr. Jason James says unfunded mandates and tests that promote recitation rather than retention have taken away from true educational instruction.
If you want a society full of test takers that can do multiple choice tests, then we're doing a really good job of meeting that need. I do not believe that we're doing a very good job educating the whole child.
Some of the educational problems don't need more money to fix. Some do. But most of all in Alex, we learned what schools need most of all is support.
We have to really come together and stop and dial down the rhetoric of casting all the problems of society on the teacher.
And support is something the tiny town of Alex has in abundance.
Everybody does come together, whether it's athletics, academics, or the simple of doing some construction on the school. So everybody helps out.
Keith Alcorn owns The Feedlot, the best barbecue in Alex. He's also on the school board and says the community supports the school.
The community's growing so much, it's huge.
And that support keeps the entire town alive. It is the community connection that makes small schools like Alex survive.
Doesn't matter if we're having a Christmas musical. Our community comes out and supports our kids, and without that, education is very difficult.
Alex has to tackle the same problems as big and little schools all over the state, but the solutions to those problems so far seems to be a one-size-fits-all approach.
We're trying to go about solving a major problem with solutions that I don't think have a very big impact on the problem.
It's hard to know if Alex is the exception or the rule when it comes to small schools. But Dr. James believes his school's success is a team effort, from teachers pulling double duty to the community that is fully invested in the next generation. After our visit, voters in Alex overwhelmingly approved a new bond measure which will build new facilities that promise to serve both the students and the community as they continue to be partners in the future. Phil Cross, Fox 25 News.
We want you to join the conversation about education in Oklahoma. If you're on Twitter, join us with the hashtag FoxEd, where we'll be answering your questions about the state of education.
And you can weigh in on our next topic right now. How can the state cope with a mass exodus of teachers?
I kept seeing the same pattern of these young adults were grossly underprepared for life after high school.
The education emergency in the classroom when we come back.
Fewer people are becoming teachers and more kids are in our classrooms. Like, who's teaching them?
Recruiting versus retention with emergency certifications at an all-time high. Is it money or motivation that's missing? And remember, you can have your say on the state of education. Join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag FoxEd as we find out if school districts have found the cure or if it's just another stopgap solution to the crisis in the classroom.
From recruiting teachers from Spain and Puerto Rico to a growing list of emergency certifications, Fox 25's Mireya Garcia investigates how Oklahoma school districts keep positions filled.
Money matters, but educators say that low-paying salaries aren't the only problem. The Oklahoma Teacher of the Year comes from Norman Public Schools, and he's taken on a mission this year to get teachers to love their jobs again with the hope they'll stay. I spoke with Sean Sheehan about the teacher shortage and what he thinks is pushing educators out the door. Sean Sheehan arrived to teaching in a roundabout way. He got a degree in journalism with a plan to go into the Air Force, but a month before commissioning, he was medically disqualified. Then he started helping adults with disabilities in Oklahoma City.
I kept seeing the same pattern of these young adults were grossly underprepared for life after high school.
So he was inspired to inspire.
And I'm like, guys, your disability does not disqualify you from life.
After going through an alternative certification process, Sheehan now teaches algebra to kids with learning disabilities.
For me, it was about helping kids understand that their disability did not have to define, who they were going to be.
And he's done good work for students in Norman Public Schools. Just 5 years in, he won Oklahoma Teacher of the Year.
That was pretty stellar. I guess I'm still kind of in disbelief.
Now he'll spend the next 12 months out of the classroom, just steps away from the state capitol, trying to foster change by boosting morale, hoping that will help keep educators in classrooms.
To me, the teacher shortage isn't really surprising, right? So we're kind of inundated with negativity surrounding the profession. So I think I know people are very apprehensive about pursuing a career as an educator.
Sheehan looks at pictures of his students, then he tells me about almost leaving Oklahoma to teach somewhere else. He decided to stay to see his first students graduate. Now he has a bigger mission, a campaign called Teach Like Me. He started it in 2013 after hearing tired teachers trashing the profession to the very students they were educating.
She was like, don't do this job, the pay's too low, you're kind of not really in control of a lot of things. and you're smart enough to do something else, which was kind of like a slap in the face, right? You're like, who sells the profession like that?
Sheehan thinks if Oklahoma changes the way it thinks about teachers, maybe more people would want to be one. Perhaps a naive idea. He knows some people will think so. But to Sheehan, this is a place he can start.
Yeah, pay is low. We got to do something about that. And schools are underfunded. We need to do something about that. But, ... like, surely you teachers are here for a reason, right?
Teacher shortages have forced districts across Oklahoma to get creative. There is active recruitment. Special projects fly teachers in from other countries, and emergency certification numbers have increased drastically. This year, the state approved 842 emergency certifications. There were 280 applications in 2014, 198 in 2013, and 99 in 2012. Even after those efforts, the Oklahoma State School Board Association estimates there are 1,000 unfilled positions across the state this year. Fox 25 visited with Norman Public Schools Superintendent Joe Ciano, who says the current process is a Band-Aid.
I don't think it's a resolution, and I hope that nobody out there sees this emergency certificate pathway as a resolution to the problem.
Ciano thinks the problem is twofold: teacher pay and job desirability.
I know that there's a sense out there where you can't throw money at it. Well, first of all, we never really tried, so I like to see what that looks like anyway.
The goal would be to get more teachers by creating an environment where people feel they're working in a respected field.
Who do you want in front of your child? Do you want the person that went into teaching because maybe there's nothing else I can do? Or do you want the best and brightest that say, I can pick anything?
Back at the Capitol complex, Sheehan keeps in contact with teachers and listens to their concerns.
If fewer people are becoming teachers and more kids are in our classrooms, like, who's teaching them?
He believes teachers can be brought back around as long as they know that progress is being made on those other heavy-hitting issues. And one of those heavy-hitting issues is teacher pay. Oklahoma hasn't increased its teacher base salary since 2008, and lawmakers say that teacher raises are likely off the table again in 2016 because of continued budget shortfalls. The state superintendent's office does have a plan that would give teachers more money, and they say that they will continue to promote this plan into 2016, this despite the grim outlook. Mireya Garcia, Fox 25 News. We hear it often. Education needs more money.
But where are the billions of dollars given to education actually going? The breakdown and why some state leaders say the solution is not more money. When our Fox 25 Investigates special report continues.
With billions going to education every year, some state leaders scoff at the idea of sending more to the classroom.
But now a new state plan would do just that through a new sales tax. Keaton Fox breaks down where the money comes from, where it goes, and who is getting it.
Oklahoma schools get $6.5 billion when you tally up all the state, local, and federal funding that comes into the state. But just where exactly does that money go? Here's a breakdown of all that $6.5 billion, starting with 43%, the largest chunk, going for instruction. That's for teacher salaries, for anything that might go into classroom, like textbooks. The most contentious item that we hear about is that 7% there that goes for administrative costs and overhead costs. A lot of folks say that that is way too much, but the state points to that number, saying that overhead is only about 7% of the state's total expenditures. 6% go to non-classroom items, 9% goes for buildings and building upkeep, and then 35% goes to bond issues being paid off and other debt. Even with as much money that goes into state schools, many state leaders say it's not nearly enough, and if something drastic isn't done soon, that these problems will stay around for a lot longer. We've heard it for years. Oklahoma's classrooms don't get enough money.
Since 2007, 2008, we have had the biggest drop in education funding, and we have increased in students by about 40,000.
Alicia Priest is the president of the Oklahoma Education Association. She represents thousands of teachers across the state. She says teacher pay is a huge issue, but it's not just that.
We need to look at our evaluation system. How much money is spent on all of these outside vendors to come in and sell us how to evaluate our teachers and our administrators. All of those things drive up the cost of education.
Priest says that there are problems from unfunded mandates to testing costs that also add up. For Oklahoma education leaders, this table will prove to be the place where tough choices about what gets money and what doesn't will have to be made. With that huge expected budget shortfall over at the state capitol, budgets across the board will get cut. And people are looking now at education's budget, which gets more than 40% of state appropriations. In its latest draft request, the department is asking for an increase of $78 million, only cutting in a few areas, including grants and teacher bonuses for national certification.
Would that money be better spent other places?
Politicians like Speaker of the House Jeff Hickman says there are places to be cut, evidenced by that move to pay for ACT tests for students.
Why did we have the department spend $1.5 million to start a new program if indeed we knew that there was this huge teacher shortage, and was there a way to use those dollars for incentive signing bonuses to put good teachers, certified teachers in the classrooms in front of these children?
Let the people vote. That's our message today, the people of Oklahoma.
In the world of balanced budgets, there are two main options: cut spending or raise revenue through taxes. And that's exactly what OU President David Boren has in mind.
Over 54% of the total state budget funds education. How in the world can you close that budget deficit without there being even more cuts to education when we're already at the bottom?
A 1-cent sales tax, he says, would bring in an additional $615 million each year, allowing for an instant $5,000 raise for teachers. And while it has support from teaching groups, asking Oklahomans to up their own taxes may be a tough sell, experts tell us. New tax or no, education groups say school districts need parents now more than ever to help figure out what's best in their districts, who are seeing fewer and fewer dollars. Ember England is the executive director for Stand for Children Oklahoma, who actually holds a parent university to teach parents how to do things the district would otherwise normally have to pay for.
Make them understand why it's important for them to engage with their child's teacher, with their child's principal, how the school board works, how the state legislature works, and how state legislators and school board members work for them. They are actually their boss.
Now, that petition drive still needs thousands of signatures before it will eventually have to be approved by the Oklahoma people. Keaton, Fox 25 News.
So, will a designated funding source work, or does education's lack of money point to bigger problems for Oklahoma?
And is that the only way to get more money into the classroom or get better outcomes for students?
What we've really done is lost our children.
The state of education suggested solutions next on this Fox 25 Investigates special report.
When Oklahoma became a state, there were more than 1,000 school districts. Now there are a little more than 500.
But is that number too high? And if the state had more money, would that money alone fix our problems? Fox 25's Phil Cross investigates more suggested solutions to this classroom crisis.
It was lively. I couldn't wait to Saturday evenings when everybody would be over town.
Boley, Oklahoma hasn't been lively in some time. Downtown shows the results of decades of disrepair. Buildings that themselves saw history made are at risk of fading into history. And while there are any number of reasons one could point to for the current conditions, one of the biggest hits came just a few years ago.
It was kind of a blow to the community. It had an effect on our economy.
In 2007, the Boley School District voted to close the high school. By 2010, the elementary was unable to go on. The decision to close was a local one, but it still wasn't easy.
When you lose your school, you lose your basis for being almost.
So would closing schools save money, or enough money to make a difference in education funding?
You can save a little bit of money from that, and honestly, it's something that's happening. The school districts have pretty steadily gone down over the past decade or two.
Gene Perry with the Oklahoma Policy Institute doesn't believe consolidation is the solution to the state's education woes.
There's not an easy fix to this that doesn't involve finding more money.
Perry says education is the biggest piece of the pie when it comes to state funding. The only problem is the pie is shrinking, and Oklahoma needs to bring in more money overall.
Nobody, to my knowledge, has ever defined what underfunding is.
Byron Schlomock of the newly formed public policy research group 1889 Institute says there is no definition of what fully funded education is.
It's quite possible with the level of funding we have now to get a quality education.
The 1889 Institute sees school choice as the answer to fixing education, with a focus on creative education solutions through charter schools.
If you look at charter schools in general, they are much less top-heavy.
We can have the same people doing multiple jobs, and guess what? By having less people, we can actually pay them more. We can pay them what they probably deserve.
State Senator Kyle Loveless has a different solution, keeping every school open but consolidating administrative expenses and sharing superintendents.
We're basically saying it's more important to us to keep 512 superintendents employed versus educating our children.
His plan would eliminate the need for many of the six-figure superintendent salaries and put the money back in the classroom. An idea he says would be a multi-million-dollar boost to schools that could happen without robbing small towns of that uniting force that keeps a community together.
What we've really done is lost our children, and that's what keeps the town alive.
Because as Boley knows all too well, coming back is much harder than getting knocked down.
We always have hope. So and keeping hope alive keeps us trying to do the things we need to do to attract people back to this community.
We will have much more on this Fox 25 special report right after the break. Well, that's all the time we have, but the issues in education will require much more discussion.
Don't forget that you can continue that discussion on Twitter with our reporters and other educators using the hashtag FoxEd. And of course, you can count on Fox 25 to continue to cover all of the issues in education.